Adeline met Paul when she was in her last year at art college. She dreamed of becoming a well-known artist, and often went with her class to the open air where they painted nature and people. One day, Adeline decided to picture an upcoming sunrise over a river. She got up very early and wandered for a long time in the darkness, along the embankment, searching for the right perspective, which was not easy at all. Because having lost valuable time, she started her work instantly when the sun was shining too brightly already. Adeline was very disappointed that she missed the opportunity. Suddenly she heard someone's voice. The girl realized that at this early hour she was all alone here, and if anything happened, there would be no one to call for help. Mentally preparing to drop her things and run away, she turned cautiously and saw a young man beside her, who looked quite peaceful and smiled broadly, as if he and she were best friends. "Nice," he said, still smiling, and nodded at Adeline's artwork. "Could you draw a picture of the most beautiful girl in the world? I'll pay. If you bring her photo, I can do it," she said, and shook her shoulders. "I don't have a picture of her, but maybe you have a mirror." Adeline thought that he was just joking with her and was about to leave, but for some reason she stopped and took a small mirror out of her bag and handed it to the stranger. The man held it up to Adeline's face and said with a smile, "Here is the most beautiful girl in the world." This phrase was the beginning of Adeline and Paul's love story. Paul had just graduated from university and was working as a sales manager. He did not earn much, but he was courting nicely. He used to take Adeline for romantic walks, gave her modest but nice presents, and when she got her diploma, he proposed to her on the very spot where they first met. Adeline was in love, and of course she said yes right away. They had a modest wedding, among relatives and friends, but that was not the main thing. The important thing was that from now on, they would always be together. Paul was a very goal-oriented young man, and he knew very well with whom it was best to make friends in order to achieve success. He had a gift of persuasion and did not stop at nothing to achieve his aims. Therefore, he quickly moved up the career ladder and soon led the sales department. Adeline, on the other hand, was a creative person and never aspired to a career. Put to order, and most often just for the soul, she imagined that one day they would be bought by a real connoisseur of painting. One evening, after a hard work day, Paul came home and finally told his wife about his dream of quitting his job and going into his own business in the building materials trade. He said, "It is time to stop working for others and start making money for you and me. I know it won't be easy at first, but I'm sure it will work out." Adeline always and in everything supported her husband's aspirations, and this time was no exception. She replied, "Sure, honey, you'll succeed. Don't worry about money for the family. I work, so we'll have something to live on." Paul grinned to himself then, but kept silent because he had never taken his wife's profession seriously and could not understand why she did not want to do something more promising. Paul's business turned out to be successful, and very soon they had a son. After the baby was born, Adeline left her job at the school but continued to work at home. She painted and gave private lessons, but not very often as the baby grew uneasy and would not let her sleep. neither during the day nor at night. However, she did not forget about her dream and continued to work hard. The only thing that upset Adeline was that her husband did not notice her efforts, stopped being interested in her and her paintings, and once even rudely advised her to take care of their son, not to waste time on silly things. Adeline got very upset by his cruel words. She cried a lot and even put all her brushes and paints on the top shelf in the closet. But then she could not stand it and began to paint pictures again, but only when her husband did not see it. But the more Paul earned, the more his attitude towards his wife noticeably changed. He did not hide his disdain, believing that Adeline was idling instead of doing housework, although the house was in perfect order. And in the evening there was always a delicious dinner waiting for him on the table. He constantly found reasons to criticize, and once even said, "How can you sit at home all the time and not want to achieve anything? You and I don't even have anything to talk about anymore." Adeline felt hurt because she was ready to work on a par with Paul, but she had a little child in her arms and no one to help. She tried her best, increasing the number of students actively seeking customers. She was so overloaded with work that she had no time for sleep and rest. She felt unwell and often felt dizzy. Adeline often felt dizzy, but her husband, Paul, noticed nothing and spent more time at work than at home. She understood that the business required Paul's presence, but when her husband became absent even at night, citing urgent matters, and his clothes began to smell of other women's perfume, he filled with anxious doubts. Besides, on the eve of the date of their acquaintance, which had always meant even more to the spouses than their wedding day, Adeline prepared carefully. She decided that this holiday would help them regain their former feelings. As back from Syria, when the woman told her husband that she had booked a table at their favorite restaurant, he took the news rather coolly. "Do you remember what day tomorrow is?" asked Adeline. "Of course. Don't wait for me today. I'll be late," replied Paul coldly as he hurried to work. The next day, Adeline left her child with the nanny and went to the restaurant, imagining how Paul would arrive with a huge bouquet of her favorite flowers, as he did all these years. Adeline had been sitting at the table, waiting for her husband for over an hour, but he still wasn't there. Tired of waiting, she decided to order his favorite dish and called the waiter. Suddenly, the door slammed, and though she was sitting with her back to the door, she immediately realized it was Paul. Adeline did not turn around and waited for her husband to approach her, but to her surprise, Paul passed by and snuggled up at another table. Adeline wanted to call him, but then she saw that he was nicely talking to a long-legged blonde. At first, Adeline thought it was a business dinner and did not dare to disturb her husband, but when she saw that the blonde hugged him, she could no longer stand it and came over to their table. "I think there's no need for explanations. I mean, you already understood everything. Can't me, you already, oh please, let's not make a scene. You can pack your things and leave today. I do. Don't care. I mean, I'm not interested in you anymore. I just want something better." Adeline ran out of the restaurant. She stood in the street, bursting into tears and could not immediately calm down. When she came to her senses a little, she wondered why that woman seemed familiar to her, and immediately remembered that a rich man, Mr. Hill, had recently asked Adeline to paint her portrait. Although Adeline was not vindictive, she could not forgive such a betrayal. As he walking over to the window, from which she had a clear view of the couple, she turned on her smartphone camera. Adeline's plan turned out to be more successful than she expected. It turned out to be simple. When Adeline handed Mr. Hill a portrait of his precious wife, she also showed him a video of her date with her lover. But the man was furious, and when he found out that the man in the video was Adeline's husband, he offered to help her. He turned out to be a good man and helped her find a new apartment and move out from her unfaithful husband. Also, he ordered a series of paintings, and so Adeline had a job for a long time and could not worry about money. Paul did not go unpunished. His company went bankrupt quickly, and of course his mistress's husband had a hand in it. Paul was left out of business, and his mistress, not wanting to stay with a loser, abandoned him at once. Then Paul immediately repented to Adeline, wishing to return to the family. But she was not going to forgive such a betrayal, because someone who betrays once will always remain a traitor. And Adeline, without remorse, erased him from her life. Paul's mistress did not escape punishment either. She tried to beg her husband's forgiveness, but Mr. Hill still filed for divorce. But in court he proved the fact of adultery, so he was able to protect his entire fortune, leaving his wife with nothing. Meanwhile, Adeline finished her series of paintings and brought them to Mr. Hill. She was surprised when the man made her an appointment at the gallery. Upper inside, Adeline was even more surprised to see that there were no paintings on the walls. "Why are the walls blank?" she asked. "Actions. Well, you're the director here from now on, so you should decide which pictures will decorate these walls." As it turned out, the man, in gratitude for the fact that Adeline opened his eyes to his wife, decided to fulfill her dream and offered her to be the director of the gallery he opened. By the way, I think the best way is to start with your exhibition. As it turned out, the man, in gratitude for the fact that Adeline opened his eyes to his wife, decided to fulfill her dream and offered her to be the director of the gallery he opened. Adeline, of course, accepted the offer because she had long been dreaming of having a solo exhibition. Now, she knew that if someone really wanted something, the dream would come true. Thus, the happy woman bravely stepped into a new, interesting life, full of creative successes and reliable friends.